I'm Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this Trinity Gathering Bracelet. It is a collection of triangles in a pattern that you can make into a necklace, earrings, or as well into a fun bracelet. It has a nice fall tone and even goes a little bit into that holiday colors, and it is in this month's kit subscription box. If you're interested in subscribing or you want to see the full list of materials, go ahead and look below the video. In the link there, it'll get you back to our website. Gather up your supplies and let's get started to make lots of triangles. So to begin, we are going to be making a series of triangles. You may need to make 8, you may need to make 7. It all depends on the size of your wrist. You may need to make 9. We're going to be using 6 bicones, and these are 3 millimeter per style. We have 15 OC beads, Delicas, and 11 OC beads. We're going to begin with creating a triangle, and the pattern is consistent throughout each of the triangles that we're stacking one on top of the other. But to begin, we are going to begin with one of our 3 millimeter followed by a 15-0, and we're doing that 3 times since we're making a triangle. We're going to gather these together down at the base of our thread. And each triangle will be its own separate unit, which is kind of a pain to be able to have to put together, but it's way easier than trying to reverse the triangle. Once you have these together and tied in a knot here, making sure that your thread is not showing any extra space, you are going to do your next row of your triangle. The next row of the triangle, you want to make sure that you're coming out of a 3 millimeter bead. So I'm going to bring my thread and needle out the 3 millimeter bead. And then we are going to add an 11, 15, 11, go over top of the 15 that's already there and into the next 3 millimeter bead. Everything we do in sets of 3. So now that we have that one time, we're going to do that a second and a third time. This is going to create what I usually call the spines of my triangles that will become the herringbone stitch. The gold beads are going to be our herringbone stitch, and our 15 OC beads are pretty much just going to be free rides that they're going to hang out in the middle, and we are never going to be using them. They just run right down the middle of that herringbone row. After being done here, I want you to go through that first original 3 millimeter bead and up through, stepping up through my first of my 11 OC beads that I just added. We're going to do our second row of our herringbone now, our first being those 11 O's, and we are going to add another 11, again that free load 15 and an 11, so we have our 2 11s for our herringbones. We're going to, coming up through bead number 1 of the herringbone row previous, we're going down through bead number 2. And see how that gets you that second row of herringbone, again with those 15 O's just hanging out in the center. Coming out of the 11 O's, you are going to go ahead and we are going to get ready to add 1, 2, and 3 15s that sit right above our 4 millimeter or 3 millimeter crystal. Go into bead number 1 then, after adding those, into bead number 1 of your next row of your herringbone. We're going to continue that another 2 times, 11, 15, 11, up through the first 11 that your thread was coming out of, down through the second one that's already there. 3 15s over top of your 3 millimeter bead, and up into that first 11 O that sits next. Again, corner unit, 11, 15, 11, down through the 11, that's the second one from the row before it. And then right here, 1, 2, and 3 of your 15s. Once you're there, you need to do a step up. At the end of each of your 3 sides here, we're stepping up. So we are going to go through 2 of our gold 11s. The gold 11 that the thread was originally coming out of when we started to add the second row, and out through the first bead from the second row that we just added. And that ends our second row of our herringbone. Now you can see the 15s just kind of need pressed down a little bit to cooperate, but that's the interior of our triangle. From here, we're going to do our next row. We're going to add the herringbone, and then we're going to add a 15 and a Delica. So we're going to add our herringbone, which always on the side is going to be 11, 15, 11, coming out the 1, going into the second. That never changes. What does change is basically when we're in between the herringbone in the triangle section here. And what we're going to do first is we are going to grab that middle of the 3 beads that we added. That middle of the 3 beads, when we add them, we are going to again do a 15-0 seed bead and then one of our Delica beads. And we're going to sew into that middle 15-0. Coming out, we're going to reverse it and we're going to do a Delica and a 15 and then into our first bead of our herringbone. Coming out the herringbone, repeat your herringbone, 11, 15, 11, down through the second 11 from row 2. Make sure that cooperates and that it's not twisted in the middle there. And then coming out here again, we're going to do our 15 from in our Delica into that center bead. So you'll notice above the crystals, we're doing Peyote Stitch. And then on the corners, we're doing, on the spine, we're doing Herringbone Stitch. So in goes the opposite here of the Delica and 15. And then in. So you've got 2 sides done with that. We've got one more side, 11, 15, 11, down through bead number 2 of the 11 O's from the second row of your herringbone as we add this third row. Above, 15, Delica, into that middle 15 from the previous row. Reverse it, Delica, then 15, into the herringbone. Again, this is my last side, so I'm going into that second row of herringbone, like we've been doing, going around. But since my third row is already there, we are stepping up into the third row. So you're always stepping up. Now we get to do our 4th row of our herringbone. The 4th row of the herringbone pretty much mirrors the same thing that we're doing in 11, 15, 11 on our herringbone rows, coming out of bead number 1 from row 3 of our herringbone, going down through bead number 2 of that same herringbone row. Along the sides here then, we're going to do the same thing where we do a 15-0 and then a Delica. We're going to go through the Delica that's already there. And see how that sits kind of stacked nicely, one on top of the other, right along the side here. In between, we are going to go with an 11-0 seed bead and out through the Delica. Once you're out through that Delica, you're going to reverse it, Delica, 15, and into your spine. And that ends that row. Again, or ends that sequence. Again, 11, 15, 11, down the opposite side here. And there's some really, really beeping vehicle outside. And then we're going to do the 15, the Delica, into the Delica. Once you're out of the Delica from the row before, you do use an 11-0 into the second Delica from the row before, Delica 15 into the corner. Around again, through my side here, making sure, see how that wants to twist there, just kind of twist it in your hand, make sure that it lays nice and even. And then this is our last side of that, 15, Delica. The 15 is just kind of a space saver. Into the Delica that's already there, add your 11-0 seed bead into the second Delica that's already there, Delica, 15, into the 11-0 that finishes out that third row, and up into the Delica that is the 4th row that we just added. That finishes our 4th row of our herringbone stitch. All right, now we're ready for our next row here. So again, we're on the corner after stepping up, and we do our 11, 15, 11, and we go on down. Now you'll notice in the interior, the last 2 times we've used a 15. We're actually going to be switching now and using a Delica first. The reason that we're doing this is because we have a pattern kind of that we're trying to keep with those Delicas. So as we go in here, we're going to do a Delica, then a 15. And then we're going to go in through that Delica bead that's already there. And this is again so that it fits correctly. See how kind of that next line there takes the Delica. Then we're going to go in and we're starting to do a series of 3. So we're going to do an 11-0 into the 11-0, 11-0, into the Delica. So that gets 3 11-0s right in there. And then again, going opposite than what we have been doing, we're doing the 15 first and then the Delica, and then into the corner unit. And see how that just fits really, really nicely? It keeps our line of our 15s going. And we're going to do our 11 Delica 11 along the side, over to the next side, and we'll go over that one more time. One more time here, we're switching. So we have been doing 15 Delica. This one we're doing Delica 15 into that Delica bead, 11-0 into the 11-0. Of course, I need one more 11-0 poured out. Get one more. Ooh. Or throw them all over. We'll have fun cleaning them up, making more and more triangles. Go through the Delica that's already there after the 11-0. Then we're reversing it, 15 and a Delica into that corner unit. In the corner here, 11 Delica 11 into the second, down into the second bead of that herringbone row. Again here, coming out the side, we do Delica, then a 15 into the Delica from the previous row. Add an 11, through an 11. Add an 11, through a Delica. Coming out of the Delica, we add a 15 and then a Delica. And this time again, I'm stepping up. So I'm going through what looks like the second row of herringbone down, but that's ending that fourth row of the herringbone. And I'm stepping up into the fifth row that we just completed. And that's that round. So we're starting now on our sixth row of our herringbone, and we've got our corner beads in there. I've done the 11, 15, 11, and then we're changing it up a little bit on the side here. You're going to do a Delica and sew through the Delica and the 15. This is the first time we're sewing through 2 beads at a time. We're going to add another one of our Delicas and go through the 11 that's already there. At this point, we're putting in one of our 3mm bicones. You can use a 2mm also. And then we're sewing through the 11. You're going to notice it sits a little bit off because the hole sits higher than the 11 below it. Don't worry, we'll correct that. Delica then goes on and through the 15 and Delica right after. From here, another Delica goes on and into that corner bead into the herringbone. Coming out the herringbone, add your corner herringbone of 11, 15, 11 down through bead number 2. Once you're down through bead number 2 there, same thing goes on. Delica gets added through the Delica 15. Once you're through there, you add one more Delica to maintain that row of Delicas kind of coming up. See how that maintains that row of Delicas there? Add your crystal through the 11 Delica, through the 15 Delica, add another Delica in through the corner. Through the spine there, do another one of your 11, 15, 11, down through bead number 2. We'll finish this one up here, 11, through the Delica 11, another Delica, through the 11, 3mm, through the 11, Delica, 11 Delica you're sewing through, or 15 Delica rather. Add another Delica and into that corner. Again, this is where you do the step up, so it looks like you are going through 2 rows instead of 1, but you're going through the one that you were just coming out of, as well as the first one that you completed. Now, this is the first time we're going to change our corners. So our corners now, we are going to corner off 1, 2, and 3 of our 15-0s and down through the second side. And that just creates a little cap on the end there. Coming out here then, when we top the herringbone, we're going to add a Delica. We're going to sew through the Delica. We are going to add a Delica and a 15. And of course, you know, just when I need to, I always need to pour out just a couple more. So this one we're switching back to Delica 15. Sewing through the Delica, that's next. This is coming out right before the crystal. We're going to add an 11-0 and sew through our crystal. This is going to help our crystal to sit correctly. 11-0 out of the crystal and through the Delica that's there. Coming out the Delica that's there, you're going to add a 15 and a Delica. Again, we're following those Delica and the 15 lines there. Through the Delica that's already there, add a Delica into the corner unit. Again, when we come to the corner for the herringbone, that is when we use our 3 15-0s. And you can always, if you need to, slow this down, watch it again. We also have the pattern for sale in case you want and are a pattern person to look at exactly what you're putting on and taking off. Delica goes on as we go this last round through the peyote here. You go through the Delica, then we do a Delica and a 15. We go through the Delica. We add one more 11-0, sew through the crystal. Add an 11-0, sew through the Delica. Add a 15, again, right at the end. Just a couple more beads needed. But you've got a lot of triangles to make. And you are going to make all of the triangles, and then we're going to piece them together. 15 Delica, through the Delica, one more Delica, step up into the corner. This is our final corner to go in and add our 3 15s and down through bead number 2. There you have bead number 2 out there. Last time, Delica, through the Delica that's already there. Delica, 15, through the next Delica that's there sitting up. 11 through the crystal. Coming out of the crystal, 11. And I like that this is like wintry colors, but not Christmassy colors. You can wear this any time of year. I picked a very kind of neutral or like vintagey Christmas to work with it. 15 and a Delica, into the Delica, add one more Delica, and into the last 11-0 that sits on the herringbone line. Now we're going to have some fun adding these all together. The way we're going to add them together is it's actually going to sit almost three-dimensional. We are going to be taking one of the sides of the triangle, the crystals, and we are going to be sewing it on so it looks like a point. See how it kind of creates a point there? And the 15 O's will hide one of them, the corners, underneath. So you can go ahead and finish off your triangles if you want to. I did leave thread attached to the end of each of my triangles. So that way coming out this 11-0 seed bead, I can get ready and line it up. If you're lining it up and you have extra thread coming out, try to line up the extra thread so it's coming out the other side. That makes a lot of sense. It makes it easier. When you're coming out the 11-0 seed bead here and you're going and getting ready to connect to the one above it, you're going to add a 15 just to create the size differential, 11 crystal, maybe if it wants to go. I'm going to go through the 11. You're going to go through the crystal, through the 11. And this again, I'm on a different triangle. Sewing through, grabbing all this thread and pulling it through. After coming out that other triangle of the 11-0, you're going to add another 15. And then see how you're coming out here of the 11, just like you were doing another herringbone row, excuse me. You're going to go down through the 11. That sits on the opposite. That's going to sit without it twisted, get those thread ends out, right on top of the other one. And that just sits right there, right at the end, and adds the two together. So it kind of sits almost three-dimensional that you have that going. I'm going to reinforce going back through that last row of herringbone. So I'm coming out the 11, and I'm going to add just one of my 11-0s, go up through the 11 herringbone on the other side, go through the 15 that you added, do this connection piece. You're basically reinforcing. Nice and tight there. Go through the 11 crystal 11, which usually will line up nicely like they did now. Coming out of that, I have a little knot in my thread there, so I keep snagging. Coming out of that, make sure you go through the extra added 15 that we added for height. And then the trick is tying off your thread ends. We'll concentrate on adding the clasp at the very end after our triangles are all together. So here I am at the back. Give a nice tight pull. Go through that 11 that you added there to get across the thread. Go up into that herringbone stitch. I'm going to flip over to the front. And now I'm going to look at what I call sometimes my exit plan. So now I'm going to look at my exit plan and say, okay, I've got that little triangle point sitting right there. How am I going to get rid of this extra thread? I'm going to drop it down into the herringbone row, kind of right there, tucking it in. Bringing it down along the piece here. Down into this herringbone row. And then this one, because it's my first one, I'm going to weave it back down through so it's coming here at the end. Now with this next one here, I'm going to do the exact same thing, getting ready to connect to my next little triangle point. This is going to sit pretty much right underneath, just like that, as we connect the next triangle together. So to show that connection one more time, I've got 4 of mine connected here, and I've got at least probably 3 more to go to make my bracelet. I'm coming out of the 11 crystal 11. I add a 15 right after. I go into the row back, the 15 at the corner here, or sorry, the 11 at the corner. Coming out the 11 at the corner. Kind of punch to the back. Sorry, I should have come out the back side. After that 11 at the corner, add an 11. Go into the opposite side 11 there that your thread is not coming out of. So I'm jumping from one 11 to the other, right along the back there. Add a 15, and then through that 11 connection again. 11 crystal 11. Once again, we're going to reinforce, going through the 15 we just added, going through the 11, wiggling up through there. And that's going through the last row of the herringbone 11. Once you're through there, nice tight pull. We want to make that nice and tight. Go through the 11 that you added. Go through the second 11 from the herringbone row. After exiting through that second 11, also exit. If you can at the same time, go through the 15 that got added as we were grouping them together. Through the 11, crystal 11. And now I get to get rid of my thread. So that's it for the connection point. You can see there all those. I usually take that 3 collection of seed beads and kind of pop them towards the front. The seed bead that has the bump up will stay to one side. From here, it's time to get rid of your thread. So how have I been getting rid of my thread here in my design? I've been reversing it. So the thread's coming out the 11 right there of the crystal. Reverse the thread down through the 11 below it, through the 11 after that, and you're just going right along your herringbone, basically, or right along your peyote stitch, rather. And what I'm going to do is go through my peyote stitch in one direction. So I went all down towards me. Now I'm going to flip it and go through the opposite way. And then I'm going to flip it one more time and burn it off. So that acts like a natural lock, basically, going the opposite ways through the peyote. You'll see a little bit of thread on the side, but it really does not show up at all. And then once you lock that thread in place, like doing so, I'm not even worrying about a knot because I've reversed it 3 times. And then I just go right in, burn down that thread end close to the project, and then burn it down flush against the project. Same thing with the centers here. I've just been going through and burning them down right along the project. I'll bring this thread and needle now, coming out through the 11, crystal 11, and I'll get ready to add my next triangle. Again, I'm going to end up, for my tiny wrist, I actually may end up just with 6 triangles. You may need a 7th one. And then if you have extra supplies, you can always add them together for an earring. I thought the earring would be great connected right there where you have your crystals going together, or adding a 3rd and a 4th to sit them apart. So go ahead and add another crystal in the connection, and then we'll get ready after doing so, once you have the length that you desire, to add your infinite clasp. So on this side of the bracelet, I use the ancient gold, which I like because it's kind of in between the gold and the red, and can be more gold tones or kind of more coppery tones, which I like to kind of make it look almost like a little tree at the end there. All right, so here at the end, I've done my connection point, just showing you right there, 2 15s, then my clasp, then 2 15s, and traveled back through those last 11 O's on that side. On this side here, I picked the smaller side to be my trigger side to go in. I actually don't have any thread right there, so I'm going to add a new piece of thread. I have plenty of them, and I'm just going to pick a random spot here to start my thread. And what I'm going to do is go up and circle my thread around. So I'm starting my thread. I'm going to reverse my thread. I'm going to reverse my thread. Again, not even a knot, just reversing. And then you can see how that is tight. That is not going anywhere. So that's why I said you can kind of just lock your thread in place rather than having to knot it when you have tight peyote stitch like this. All right, coming back out through the top now, we are coming out through our 11, just like we have been doing. When I come out my 11, I'm going to add 1 15. Make sure when you're looking at it that the clasp is sitting the correct way, that when you bring the clasp back together, that it's going to clasp correctly. So right now I need the bottom basically of my clasp. I'm going to go through the bottom of my clasp, and the infinite clasps do have a soldered ring there. If you do not have something with a soldered ring, I would highly recommend getting something with a soldered ring or using a wire guard. Another 15 goes on, and I'm going into the opposite 11 that sits on that herringbone row. And then I'm going to add my 11, go up through the first bead from the herringbone row and out. Oops, wrong way. Right there towards the center. And then I'm just reinforcing, so it matches basically as you're looking and as you're going. I need to get rid of that starter thread there, and I'll burn that down. I'm going in here, reinforcing, going through the clasp. And by this point in time, you're probably sick of making triangles. But if you happen to make more triangles than you need, like I did, and actually Chris Lewis King, one of our community members, was visiting here, and I enlisted her help to make some of my triangles as well. It was a group effort for all of these triangles. We got excited, made about 10 triangles, and that means you have enough for a pair of earrings as well too. All right, up we go. Once you have that reinforced one more time here, you can see that it's going to finish it out. I'm going into my stitch. I'm going to reverse that peyote stitch a little bit more. If you want to, since that thread end is there, you can tie the 2 thread ends together. It's completely up to you. But you're just basically, anytime you add a clasp, I think of it like sewing on a button, that you have that button that you want to make sure it doesn't fall off. So you tend to put a couple extra layers of thread through that connection point. Ooh, I'm connecting to my triangles. Again, I've got four extra triangles here that I'm excited to make into earrings. And then I'm going to reverse this thread along the peyote stitch and burn it. Once I'm done, my Trinity Gathering Bracelet of all of these triangles is completed. It's super fun design to kind of see that look of the triangles. Has a little bit of a tree look, has a little bit of a holiday look, but really muted colors that you can wear it well into fall. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this Trinity Gathering Bracelet. It's fun to see what you can do with triangles. Again, I have Lots of extras to make some earrings, maybe even in a little pendant in with them as well too. So hopefully you guys enjoy making them and continue in different colors. I would love to see pictures of yours in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It always helps out community members that are watching and want to see other colorways, but maybe don't have a great amount of time to kind of try stuff out. So that is super helpful for them. As always, if you haven't yet, hit the little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. And kit subscribers, thank you so much for subscribing. And everyone, stay tuned for more inspirational designs.